Hola, buenas. Yo soy Peter. Bienvenidos a la sesión tercera of Understanding Spanish Verbs. The third session, la sesión tercera. It's third or tercera if you intend to spend time in Latin America. In the first two sessions, which you need to see before this, the first session we looked primarily at regular verbs, those verbs ending in AR, ER and IR. We looked at those and then we started to look and say, well, yes, but some verbs are not regular. In the regular, if you remember, we always have a stem, and we used cantar to sing, and the stem of cantar is cant, and we just add the ending. But there are many important Spanish verbs which are not so kindly, which are not so easily worked out. That's a wonderful system to have the stem and so on. And we started to look at irregular verbs. So we have regular verbs and irregular verbs. And I used estar and ser to introduce you. So estar is just about regular. And notice I said soy Peter because I use ser. And if you remember, ser always feels like permanent. It's not going to change. My name is Peter. It's not going to change. Soy Peter. Soy inglés. Okay? So now I want to give you some more examples of irregular verbs, common irregular verbs that you must know because they're just so common, and see how they work. Okay. Let's take this off. So let's take a very, very simple example. Let's start off with tener. Tener, as usual, that is the infinitive. Okay, the to. And tener is to hold, to have. To have. Okay? So we look at it and think it's an ER verb, that's fine. So we just do this and we take that off and it's irregular. Tener is irregular and you use it all day, every day. Because you're always saying I have, I hold, I this, I that. It's a very common verb. Let's write it out, and we'll write it out in what I hope now is a familiar shape. Okay? Tengo. Tienes. Uh-oh. Yeah. It went. Tiene. Tenemos. Tenéis. Remember, a reminder, as always, it's the way that most people who come to me for clinic, that is one of the most common ways to not be understood. You think you know how to speak in Spanish? Only the Spaniards will tell you whether that's right or not. Double vowel, not the same, just two vowels together. They don't use double vowels. Tenéis. Huh? Because if you say tenés, they won't understand. That's halfway between tienes and... Okay? Tenemos, tenéis, tienen. So, this is an irregular, common irregular verb. And you may remember from the previous two sessions that I mentioned something a bit strange about the boot. We write it like this because this is I have, you singular have, he, she or it has, we have, you plural, you all have, and they have. And the verb is tener. And it is very common to have that imaginary stem reappear there and there. That is immensely common through irregular verbs. And that's the reason we call it the boot, is because we could do that, couldn't we? So you should expect that with most irregular verbs. It's just a way of helping you to work out where you're going. Okay? So, tengo, tienes, tiene, tenemos, tenéis, tienen. Those two are out of the boot. These four are in the boot. That's very common. And a little quick win to add on to it as you start to use that. I have, tengo. I have. We say in English often, I have to go shopping. So does the Spanish. How do they do that? Just put que after it. Tengo que. I have to, this afternoon, go shopping. I need some food. Tengo que ir a comprar. Tengo que ir, to go, and that's a really, really irregular verb. A comprar. I must go shopping. So if you want, if Spaniard wants to say, I need to, I have to, I must, etc., they will normally say, tengo que. So get used to listening for it, because you hear it 20 times a day normally. Bueno, me alegro verte, tengo que ir. I've got to go. Me alegro verte. To me, it pleases to see you. Great to see you. Gotta go. Tengo que ir. Tengo que ir. Get used to hearing that tengo que. Tengo que. It's very, very common. So it comes from the irregular verb tener, to have, to hold. Okay? So that's tener, an example of the irregular verb. Let's do a few more, because we will do the really common ones, because you will have to be able to both say them and understand them. And whenever you hear tengo que or tiene que, you can put that que with any one of them. Yeah, I didn't specifically mention that, hoping that it's obvious. Tienen que. Tienen que ir. What's that mean? Tienen in was they. They have that to go. They must go. Tienen que ir. But I wanted to talk to them. No. No está posible. Tienen que ir. They've got to go. Okay, so each part of tener, each one, depending on who you're referring to, you simply put que after it, que, and then add whatever else. You can simply say, tengo que. I've got to. Yeah? Okay. Second one, irregular verbs. Hacer. Hacer. Or if you prefer it, ce. Whenever you see that, or ci, you can say the or thi, or se or si. I say the because I speak mainland Spanish. Hacer. Hacer is to do or make. Incredibly common. Okay, so what does it look like? It's not that bad. Say that. Arrow. Listen. Arrow. Arrow. Not ago. And no W on the end, yeah? Ago. No. Arrow. Arrow. You understand? The G is always more guttural in Spanish. Arrow. Arrow. Feel it down here. And it's a short O. The big tendency for English speakers, particularly Southern English speakers, is to put a W on the end and drop the voice. Oh. Argue. Argue. One of my clients in Winchester really struggles to do things like that, because what they've been brought up to do is to say argue. Nobody would understand that in Spain. Arrow, arrow, arrow. Yeah? So arrow. Then it changes. Haces. A little bit like that. Hace. Hacemos. Hacéis. Hacen. So you see how it's irregular again? And this time we can't do the boot. That's fine. But it's a very, obviously, all day, every day, we are doing or making. So it's important that you simply learn that. And one of the real key reasons why that is because, as usual, it's sunshine here. Yeah? It's good weather. It is good weather. Spanish don't say it is. When it's concerned with weather, and we'll do a session on weather later on in the series, then they use hacer, to do or to make. Hace buen día. Let me write it. Hace buen día. It makes good day. With that, that's slightly colloquial, but it's the way that all Spanish do it. You can say, hace un día bueno. That's exactly the same thing. But as I've said to you many times, and I'll continue to say, just like does English, the Spanish take the shortcuts all the time. Hace buen día. Hace muy buen día. Muy, as usual, is very. Muy buen día. So, hace, concerned with weather. Bah! Madre mía, hace frío. Hace frío. The Spanish get cold when it drops below 20. I love them to death. Hace frío. Yeah. Madre mía. Madre mía. Hace calor. See how common this is? That's just the weather. Yeah? So, frío, you can imagine, can't you? Cold. Calor, hot. But it isn't, it's hot. We say it's hot. They say it makes hot. Yeah? Hot is also a noun. And so is frío. So there's a great example of why you have to learn these common irregular verbs. And gradually you start to see patterns. What you can see, as I said on session 2 on understanding verbs, is you've still got these types of endings. What tends to change is some bits here yeah, you've still got the same sort of endings. That's a bit like an ER verb, isn't it? S, E, emos, eis, en. So they're not totally weird that you have to learn every single bit of them. They just change the stem backwards, forwards, upside down, and all the rest of it. Okay. So, let's do a couple more and see where we get to. Poder. Oops. Can't write today. I've been up looking at the snow. It's really snowing heavily on top of the Pyrenees at the back. And look, it's perfect here because we're in the lee of the Pyrenees. Not that you're interested in that, but I was just up doing an early morning walk up to the edge of the snow. Poder. That means to be able or can. Okay, so let's go through it. It's irregular. It can't write today. Puedo. Puedes. Notice that because it is an ER verb, it does follow that basic rule, as I've said, okay? Puede. What changes is the stem. Now, podemos, podéis, pueden. I can. I'm able. You singular can. He, she or it can. We can. You all can. And they can. And I'm sure you've already noticed. Okay? It's a boot verb. See how the stem here is irregular, because there's in effect the stem, and then the stem is regular again, so commonly that happens. So if you want to say I can, yo puedo hacerlo. Yo puedo hacerlo. I've just used hacer. See how common it is? Yo puedo. See if you can understand. Yo puedo. Puedo. Notice my puedo isn't de. It's the. It's the. It's de. At the end of the verb we drop it. At the end of a word we drop it all together. But it's puedo. Puedo. It's not as guttural. It's not as d. Puedo. There's no W on the end, so it's puedo. Puedo. Practice that. Ue. Puedo. Yo puedo hacerlo. Yo puedo. I can. I'm only saying yo. I'm only saying yo because I'm pointing at me and saying I can do it. Okay? Yo puedo hacer. We've done that, to do. And lo. And we'll be coming on to pronouns and object pronouns, etc., etc., etc. soon. Yo puedo hacer lo. And just for those of you who might have a bit more Spanish, and we'll all get there if you keep going with this, yeah. That's hacer, the verb, to do, yeah, or to make, and lo is it. And in Spanish, you tag it on the end of the infinitive, that's the infinitive. Yo puedo hacerlo. I can do it. Yo puedo hacerlo. Okay. What have we got? A lot of common ones here. These are all ones that you will use all the time. Next really common one is querer. Querer. The idea? Doesn't matter. It's to want. So, when you're travelling in a Spanish-speaking country, you won't know everything. Maybe even if you know the Spanish, you will always want things. You'll want to find things. You'll want to do this. You'll want to do that. You'll want to do the other. So you'll use this literally all the time. So see if you can work it out how we're going to go. It's quite similar to previous ones. First one is quiero. Not quiero. 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 ¿Quieres? Quiere. Can you guess? Yeah? We're in these two now. Yeah. I want you to start to see the patterns, because language learning is all about looking for patterns, building blocks, patterns. See the stem? Oh, here comes the stem. And we just put the moss on the end. We'll probably get the stem again then, won't we? Yes, we will. With the next ending on it. And what will we get at the end? We'll get the boot, won't we? We'll go back in the boot. There we go. So you can work some of these out. Once you get vaguely used to them, yeah, you can work some of them out. It's another boot verb. I want, you want, he, she, or it wants, we want, you all want, they want. Okay? Stem, stem, irregular. Quiero is amazing because it's just there all the time. One thing I want to say to you, and this may be a challenge for you, I actually also remember a couple of different people who said, I'm only going to speak Spanish if I can do it the way that I was brought up to speak English. And that is ultimately polite. Well, that's fine. After 2 years, one particular lady gave up. She said, I won't speak Spanish unless I can do it correctly. And there's no such thing as correct language. You may think it's correct because it's polite in your terms in which you were brought up, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. The Spanish are incredibly polite people. What they don't do is constantly say, please and thank you, and please and thank you, and would it be possible, and could I, and all the rest of it. So, querer is a victim of that, in that what you will see on many, many channels, which is ridiculous, and the Spanish laugh at it, is that the chosen way to use to want is would like. And that would be, for me, quería. That's fine. That's the subjunctive. Quería tener una... Quería... They don't need it, they don't want it. It's your decision. They do not think that you are being impolite to say, I want. Because you'll go in and say, hola, buenas. You'll have a smile. And see, you might say, quiero dos cañas. We've done in previous exercises that me pone is the best way to do that when you're ordering things like that in a greengrocer's or a bar or what have you. If you want to go to the trouble of having to think through quería and queremos and quiero, that's fine. It's not my problem. I believe I'm a very polite and respectful person. Respect is about a smile, etc., etc., and understanding. So that part of querer is the one that's overused by the English for no reason. If you want something, quiero. And while we're at it, another shortcut for you, a real shortcut here. And this is a recommendation, a very strong recommendation from me. Okay, you'll usually be travelling with somebody else, not necessarily, but you'll usually be travelling with somebody else. And when you want something, you'll have to think through the implications of using that all the time. That's not bad, that's fine. It's just another dimension. Yeah? I would say to you, and again it's about political, it's about politeness. It is not impolite to say, I want to find, when there are two of you. Us English tend to say, oh, we would like to find, we would like to find. Queriamo, it's up to you. There's no need for it whatsoever. As long as you smile, etc. Say thank you if you want. You don't need to say please, you just need to say hola, buenas, ¿qué tal? Quiero encontrar la ruta a Pamplona. I want encontrar. It's a very simple verb. Think of the old English encontrar, encounter, to find. The Spanish words are much more like the very old sort of almost Dickensian formal. They're a bit more formal because they've come straight, they're still straight through to Latin. They haven't been tampered with by the Germanic languages and what have you. So I would recommend to you that you stay in that when you want something. As I've said, me pone is more common when you're actually ordering something in a bar or a shop. So querer is a very important verb. Up to you if you want to wait for the subjunctive, etc. And then you've got to work out that that's queríamos because you're going to include both of you. In actual fact, it doesn't matter. The person serving you, the person helping you, the pedestrian helping you, doesn't need that at all. So that's a shortcut for you. Up to you to whether you use it or not. Okay. Couple more and then we'll sort it at that. Just doing the really common ones. There are more, obviously. Pensar. Any idea? Pensive? It's I think. And it's pienso. Piensas, piensa. Get there? Well done. Pensamos, pensáis, piensa. Well done. So we've got the boot, and it simply means I think. Pienso que, and you normally tag on with the imagine, yeah? We'll put in brackets. Pienso que necesito algunas bebidas. I think I need some drinks. Straightforward, pensar, I think, in the boot. Use it when you need to say to somebody. Yeah? And if often people will say, ¿qué piensas? What do you think? Just by putting that. ¿Qué piensas? If you're talking to people over in a Spanish-speaking country, honestly, you may have heard about formal Spanish And yes, we will deal with formal Spanish because you will hear it. But I learned very rapidly after making a couple of mistakes with being too formal with local people, trying to be polite, ha ha ha, that they're happy to use the familiar. And this is the familiar. Yes, we'll talk about usted, we'll talk about ustedes, we'll talk about all of those things. My strong recommendation, again, it's a shortcut. Call it a cheat if you like. I've been here 17 years. And since that first episode, I've never upset anybody in what I'm saying, because to them it's really pleasant that somebody who they might recognise as having a different accent or something like that treats them, if you like, in that familiar way. Don't worry about politeness. Okay? So, pensar. And the last one we'll do, there are more, but these are the really common ones. The last one we'll do for now is, can you say it? See? Volver. Volver is to return. Me voy. Me voy. ¿Están voy? Vuelvo a las 5:30. Vuelvo. I'll come back a las 5:30. We'll do time too. See how many things there are to do? You can't do them all at once. Okay. So, vuelvo. Vuelves. You should be able to do these with me now. Vuelve. And then, exactly, volvemos, volvéis, and, yeah, vuelven. The boot. Vuelvo. I come back. You come back. He, she, or it comes back. We come back. You all come back, return. They come back. Straightforward. Lots and lots of uses for it, but I don't want to burden you with too much detail at the moment. Now, I'm getting you into Spanish patterns, and that will stick in your mind. The old saying is, tell me I'll forget, show me I'll remember, which is why I'm writing it. Involve me and I'll understand. And your brain is designed to make patterns out of chaos. If I do that, you'll make a pattern out of that. We all do. Because it helps us to survive. So making patterns and understanding Spanish is the biggest thing you can do. They're building blocks, they're patterns, etc. Okay. So that shows you, that's a good, really good introduction into irregular verbs. You can see that there are patterns. It's not maths. You can't rely on them all the time. It is in the present tense, etc., etc. But what I'd like you to do is, that's the third one in the session of understanding Spanish verbs, and I mean understanding them. So when you hear that amos, that ace, and all the rest of it, it's, oh, right. You'll start to see those patterns, hear those patterns, and so on and so forth. Please don't just say, okay, understand that, that you're the journeyer, I'm just the navigator. What you need to do with these sessions on, particularly on understanding verbs, is to just get those things fixed in your mind. Go on to YouTube, have a look at other channels. Other people may have other ways of doing things. I'm doing this from a reality point of view in the way they do things, etc., etc. And we'll vary this now. We'll vary this. We don't want to do some more be Spanish about. Be Spanish about directions. Be Spanish about restaurants. Be actually doing it, if you like, in a way that you can do and you can use. So hopefully you enjoy those 3 sessions. That's the whole basis that you need in terms of present tense verbs, irregular and regular. And we can start to build on that framework, just as we did with the pronunciation. Yeah, that's why I went back to pronunciation. I don't care, honestly, if you are intermediate. Trust me that the biggest issues are the lack of verb capability, and even more than that, bad pronunciation. See you next time.